Again, thank you very much for coming. SharePoint 102, handling images for use online, specifically in SharePoint on Oregon.gov. I'm Sean Amsbury, and I thank you for your time today. Let's just jump right in. First off, let's assume that you have an image on your machine. By whatever means, you have either loaded it from your digital camera or made a scan, or maybe you are using an image repository drive that you're mapped to. Not really important, but you have an image at your disposal. First thing you want to do is look at the image properties and see how big that image really is, because even though it may not be very large physically, it could have an extremely large memory footprint. Now this one was taken several years ago. It was a good camera at the time. Now it's been surpassed quite a ways, but this one is 2.83 megabytes. Images from cameras now are far larger than this, but this is still way too big to use on a website. There are a few ways to shrink this down. One of the best known is probably using Photoshop. That can get a little tedious, and I don't want to spend all the time going through all the ins and outs of Photoshop today, and I am myself not a Photoshop expert, so I'm not going to touch that. There are several online services that you can upload your image to, tell it about what quality you want the image to wind up as, and it will churn for a little while and spit you back an image that is quite a bit smaller than when it started. You don't have any direct control over that, but it does shrink it down a little bit. I haven't had anywhere near the success with the online services as I have with the simple Microsoft Picture Manager application that I believe if you have Vista or above on your machine, you have at your fingertips. And it could very well be available for XP users, if there's any of those still around, that could be downloaded from Microsoft, I imagine. I have not tried to do that, though. But most state users now are transitioning to Windows 7 and have Microsoft Picture Manager at their fingertips. So we're going to take this 2.83, 2.84 megabyte picture and see how far we can knock it down and still have it be usable for the web. So we're going to right-click on the picture and tell it that we want to open it with Microsoft Office. And again, you can use whatever software you like. This is just one of the ones that has given me the greatest success, and it's really easy to use. This is a picture my daughter took. This was from Yellowstone, and she won a ribbon at the Polk County Fair with this image, so I'm kind of proud of it. The first thing we want to do is click into the Edit Pictures mode. This opens a real simple control panel on the right-hand side here. And what you can do first is to crop your image. Decide how much of that image is really useful to use. As you can see, this image is huge. 3,000 by 2,300 pixels. That's really big. So we're going to knock this down and say, and you can see when I click crop, I got the little crop brackets at the sides and corners of the picture. And so just like in a regular Microsoft application, I can drag those in and tell Microsoft what I really want. Or I can tell it what relative size I want this image to be, so I can keep my aspect ratio. So if you want something that's close to square, let's say, this is a very typical aspect ratio for an online image. The aspect ratio, by the way, is how tall is the picture compared to how wide is the picture. And if you have an aspect ratio chosen here, the picture will stay. You see how when I drag it down from the top, it also reduces the width from the side? It's keeping this aspect ratio, or this proportion of 3 by 4, whatever units you want to use. 3 pixels by 4 pixels, 3 inches by 4 inches, however you want to use that. It's keeping that ratio of height to width. And so we'll say that the real important part of this picture is right here. We've got a pretty good color balance. We go from kind of washed out over here, and we've got some pretty deep greens over here. We've got action with the steam up here. We've got action with the water down here. It's not too bad. Maybe not worthy of the Met, but it's not too bad. And we're going to click OK. So now we've dropped down the physical size of the picture by, oh, maybe a third, it looks like, but that's not enough. So we're going to go back and kind of reset. We're going to say, I want to edit the picture in a different way. So we're going to open the Edit Pictures menu again. And this time, I'm going to tell that I want to resize the picture, physically resize it. And so, since I've already chosen an aspect ratio for this, I want to keep that ratio. I want this picture not to be distorted, and I want to keep all of the content that I've decided to keep in the picture. So I'm going to use a percentage of the width and height. Now this image as it sits is 2000 by 1500 pixels. That's really big. Let's drop that down by 2/3. And we'll go 33% of the original size. Now we're talking. Now we're less than 700 by just over 500. Well, that's not too bad. That could work. It could probably go even smaller because even at this size, it's useful, but probably a little even big for your web pages as they stand. So we might even be able to go, yeah, so what if we went another third in addition to that? That, to me, looks pretty close to the size of an awful lot of images, or let's say an average size of images on Oregon.gov. So that looks pretty good to me. One more thing I can do. This is still a very high quality picture because it still is actually 2.83 megabytes, and minus a little bit because of the dimensions, but the quality is still very high. So I'm going to go one more time, and I'm going to say Edit. In a different way, I'm going to compress the picture, which means I'm going to squeeze this picture as it exists right now into a smaller memory footprint. The original size was 2.83 megabytes. Now, if I don't compress it, it should stay right about 2.83 megabytes. That's way too big for a web page picture. Now, if I compress it to be a printable picture, but no more, I have reduced it by 90%. 2.83 megabytes is 2,830 kilobytes. Compressing it for print, which means if I put that on a Word document and I print the page out, it's going to look good. That takes 90% of the size away. Look at that, 287 kilobytes. That's right, it's just less than 90%. Well, that's pretty good too, but it's still pretty big for the web. And so I can come down to a web page which reduces the quality. If you blow this picture up, we'll try it, but my guess is that if we come in more than a third bigger, we're going to start to see pixelations. But that would be a really big picture for a web page, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. And so if we go to web, now we're down to 54, almost 55 kilobytes. We've reduced that thing, gosh, what is it, by 98%, 96%, something like that. So we are really working hard on this now. Now that's an acceptable size for the web. But you can go one further. If you're going to use this image as a very small, like say a 1 inch by 1 inch on the screen icon or image button that you want people to be able to use, You can go ahead and knock this down to email quality, and now look where we're at, 7 kilobytes. You have reduced the size of this picture by 443 times in just a few minutes. You're going to make this picture, especially like if we're using it like this as a little icon button, you're going to make this picture load as if it were a character in text. It's going to just load quick. Even if somebody's on a slow connection, it's going to come up real quick. Whereas the, what did we have, 230 some odd megabyte size of a document, 280 some, that somebody on a rural slow connection, you know, out in the country and on a farm that's 16 miles away from nowhere, they're still on dial-up. That'll give them a little bit of the row by row type loading, but not much. It'll go pretty quick still. But this gives you the opportunity to be very responsible and very easily, just by selecting what quality do I want. You don't have to even decide, well, do I want this 72 dots per inch? Do I want 150 dots per inch? What do I want? No. All the guesswork's taken out. You can try it here and see what it's going to do. So for a general image, let's stick with the web page, and we're at just under 55 kilobytes. We're going to say, OK, and there's your image. Now, like I said, if we zoom into this very far, we're going to start to see pixelation. But how often do you actually see a picture that big on a web page, especially a state government web page? Usually you won't. If you are displaying a photo gallery, you can make your choices accordingly, of course. If you have some larger images and you need them to be of a high quality, fine. Do what you need to do for your purposes. But for your home page and your main pages, these images should be really pretty small in memory footprint, because we have a new idea out there that's called mobile first, and the Oregon.gov top level redesign is taking that as one of its top priorities, to be mobile first. And if we're going to play to mobile customers, we need to be very friendly to the mobile customer base, who some still pay on a pay per megabyte or pay per gigabyte basis. Some areas, in fact most areas, don't have the super high speed yet, and if you got really big pictures, your pages are going to take a long time to load. So the mobile first idea is where we're going now with the images, and we want them to be as responsible and as small as possible while still keeping the integrity of the image intact for you. So now we have this little image at 55 kilobytes. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it as a different name. I'm not just going to click Save, because then my original image is gone. I'm going to save it as, let's say, Geyser 2, and I'm going to have to come. And now I have a Geyser 2 picture that is web-friendly. Okay, so we're behind the SharePoint site, and today we're going to be concentrating on the images library for a little bit. So we'll open that up just by clicking on its name, and we're going to add a new image to the library. The easiest way to do that is by using this little button right here, Add a New Item. SharePoint allows me now to browse to the item that I want. That means that it's going to let me browse my machine that I have access to, or any mapped drives that I have access to, and go pick the picture. And so I saved that on Geyser 2 right here. See, I have another one. I was playing with this last night. And we will click Open to tell SharePoint to go ahead and bring that one up. Geyser 2 is listed right here. Add as a new version. I don't have an existing Geyser 2 in this library, so that's not even an issue. But if you are replacing an image with, say, a better version or a smaller version of an image, you might want to use that Add as a new version, so that there's no confusion about which image you're going to use with the same or very similar title. As always with uploads, it will allow you to determine which folder or choose which folder you're going to load it up to, I always go to the folder I want it in and tell SharePoint that I want to upload it from that folder, and it will put it in that folder for me. And then my version comments. This is a neat picture of a small geyser. And OK, we'll start the upload process. I get the properties to look at. You can fill this in as your agency requires. In some sites, the description field will still be required. In other sites, it won't be. That's entirely up to your site collection administrator as to whether they wanted that gone or to continue to be required. If you have retention dates in your agency, those apply to images the same as they would to pages. You can get an email reminder to review and make sure things are still relevant, still what you want to be presenting online. So as your agency dictates, you fill this out and click Save. And where to go? There it is. There's our new image. It's in alphabetical order. So if you get lost there, it doesn't go right to the end of the line. It's in alphabetical order. And we have our new image. That image, depending upon how your images library is set up, that image could now be ready for use, or it may have to go through an approval process. If it has to go through an approval process, that is something that you can take up with your agency SPOC, because they know how they have set up this library for you. So I'm going to select this, and as soon as I select it, I see, images in this directory have to be published. So I'm going to go ahead and click Publish. In some cases, your image will just have to be checked out and checked in again, and telling SharePoint that you want to use a major version for the image. Remember that major versions of documents and images are published. Minor versions are not. They are saved, but they're not published. At this point, it's been published. I have no workflows active. I can look at that. I can activate that picture and see that I can now unpublish it. So let's go see if that did it. And there it is. Notice there's no authoring in the URL. So this is the live site. Again, this is staging, but it's out there. It's live. So now that picture is going to be useful on a web page. Before I published it, if I would have tried to use that picture on a web page, it would have shown up in the browser with a box and a little red X in it, or whatever that browser was set to display for a broken image. It would not have successfully been used. So now we know that that image is ready to use. It has been uploaded and published successfully. Okay, regular home page. To put an image into a page somewhere, like this one is, we're going to edit the page. And you activate the area that you want to edit in. See my cursor flashing here. This is active. And I tell SharePoint that I want to insert the image onto the page. Insert a picture. Now, I just uploaded that picture to SharePoint, and so that's what I'm going to select is from SharePoint. The other two options are to upload it or to enter the picture on the page, to insert the picture on the page from your computer, which all that does is lead you through the steps that I just showed you for uploading, or from an address. Address, my advice is to not use an address to call a picture in unless you own the domain, or unless you own the server that that picture is on. If you own the domain that the images on, then you know what's going on with that image. You know that you haven't changed it, and you know that if you have changed it, that it will be appropriate to the needs of your pages that use it. If you go out to www.bobswebsite.com and drag an image in from a live website like that, and you're not Bob, you have no idea what Bob might do to replace that image. He might just take it down. That'd be the best thing. He may replace it with something that you would be embarrassed, ashamed, and possibly have some job problems on if it were to be displayed on a state web page. So make sure that if you call in an image from an address, it's not just a pretty image that you found out there that, you know, boy, I'd like to put that on my web page, so I'm going to use the URL for the image and just bring it in that way. You're going to run into some copyright issues maybe, and it's just plain bad practice. So we're going to tell SharePoint that we want to insert that image from SharePoint. I told SharePoint that I wanted to bring in that image from SharePoint. It puts me directly into the images directory. And so in this images directory, there's my image. So I click on it, activate it. I can verify that the right image is selected because it's called Geyser2. And I come down here to the location URL, and there it says Geyser2. It's ready to install or insert that image right where I have the cursor to tell it I wanted the image to go. Click OK. SharePoint churns a little bit, and there's my image. Now you can see for a home page, that's a pretty big image. Most images on home pages are nowhere that big, so I probably could have even gone smaller. But I know the memory footprint is small enough that we're not going to run into any problems. So now I'm just going to drag the corner of the image and say that this is about, thought I did that right. This is about how big we want that. And voila, I have an image on the page. Okay, once you have your picture on your page, well, then what can you do with it? It's really neat to have a picture on a page, but they're just pictures. So there actually are a couple of things you can do. First, I'm gonna talk about probably the fanciest request that I get from web authors is, how do I make my picture change when it's rolled over by the mouse or clicked on by the mouse? The answer to that question is you go get some JavaScript and you put it into the head or foot section of your page. I'll show you that. Here's your additional script and CSS section, the header and footer, and make that JavaScript work between your two images that you want either the mouse over or the on-click to work on. That is custom scripting. There is no ribbon command for that, and so we don't actually get into it in the formal SharePoint training, and your SPOC may not want you to get into that. So that's pretty much where we stand on that. Sure, if you're confident with HTML and with JavaScripting and you want to put that script in there to make your images change, go for it. Make it work. If you're not so confident and you're not quite sure how to do it, talk to your SPOC about it and see if it's something that is worth investing the time and learning how to do. That's going to be between you and your agency SPOC. Go get the JavaScript if you're allowed to and make it work. What we're going to focus on is those things that we can do in the ribbon. So in order to do anything with the image, we're going to have to activate it, select it. And you notice as soon as I selected the image, we have the Picture Tools and Design tabs open, or become available to us. Now to open those, we just click on it, and now we have some items here that we can use to manipulate our image. On the far left, we go for the change picture option, and that means, well, that image has gone stale, it's gone out of season, there's better pictures now, or for whatever reason, you need to update that picture, and this will allow you to do that. Again, from all three places, it will allow you to do that. Most commonly, we're going to go from SharePoint because we already know that the images that we've uploaded to SharePoint for use are web-friendly and will take the place of that one reliably. And all it's going to do is give you the page or the screen here to the window here to go and select a new picture. And that's as simple as it is. You select your picture and say OK, and SharePoint will replace your picture with the one you have determined to put in there. You can also change it directly. Let's say, for instance, that you know that your image is now called Geyser 3 because maybe you have a picture of it being more active or a different geyser or whatever like that, and the one you want to bring in is called Geyser 3. It's in your images folder in the same place, so you can just backspace over that, put in 3, and SharePoint, if we had a Geyser 3 picture there, SharePoint would bring in that picture. Okay? Let's see. I'm going to give you that, show you how that works here. This picture up here is called Joe Smith. If I wanted to change that to this picture of Joe Smith, I'd simply do that, and boom, the picture changes. It calls in a completely different picture just that quickly. So it's kind of a shortcut deal. The alt text is what a screen reader will read when it finds that picture. So you could even go in here and make it very friendly and say this is an image of a Yellowstone geyser. And then that becomes the alt text for that picture. And when the screen reader hits it, that's what it's going to read. Instead of just saying image or picture or whatever they say, it will read this alt text and tell that person who's trying to read the page, who's visually impaired, that that is a picture of a Yellowstone geyser. Important for ADA compliance, so please do use the alt text. The next button is image styles. This is all about the border of the picture. I'm going to bring this up a little higher here. All about the border of the picture. You got the default no border style. You can place a thin border, which I don't know how clear that is when it comes over the wires there, but that does actually put a thin line border around the image. Or a table border. Now that one's even harder to see. That has a very narrow white line and a very faint gray square line around that. So you've got a very light colored border that is just hinted at being framework for the picture. If you have a dark background, then that could work. You also have the dark border, which kind of separates your picture a little bit. You may have reasons to emphasize images that way. Or a light border, which makes it look like an old Polaroid picture. Ordinarily, you're going to have no border. The styles, again, the point of consistency was made. This is one of those places to really think about consistency, because a website that has a lot of different styles to different pictures that are, especially ones that are close together, it can be very distracting to try to read and pay attention. Okay, why is this picture displayed this way? Why is that one displayed that way? There doesn't seem to be a big important difference or importance difference between the two. What's the emphasis all about? And those thoughts go through the critical person's mind when they're trying to read your website for information. and so the inconsistency of styles can be distracting. Choose a style and kind of stick with it unless you have a reason to call attention to that image. The position of the image is it on the left of the page or left of the text or to the right of it? That's neat to be able to kind of arrange your page. Let's say you have several sections of your page that you want to talk about different things and illustrate the points. Well, you can alternate the left or right float in the different sections of your page just to give it a little bit of life so that it's not just on that same, dot text kind of a pattern. It breaks up the page just a little bit and makes it a little more interesting to look at without being distracting if you alternate those. And so that's what that's used for. A little bit of stylization to the look and feel of your page. And then this inline position is where in the line of text does your image appear. Now that one can get a little confusing, so I'm going to illustrate that. Is the line of text. That's the line of text. Now, when I manipulate the position of that image in its line of text, you can see that the image, when I select top, that the image top border is on the same pixel line as the text top border. The topmost possible line that any part of that text is going to be displayed on. The top of the picture and the top of the text are the same line. Here, the middle line of the picture is equal with the middle line of the line of text. And if I choose bottom, then the bottom of the picture is lined up with the bottom of the line of text. That's all that means. If you have a list of, or I don't know if that's the proper term, but if you have a vertical display of pictures and each one of them has a caption that you don't necessarily want above or below the picture, then this could be a useful tool to use there. Just again, make sure that you're using consistency there, because as you go through the line or through vertically through the page and you see text, high and low compared to the pictures it's referring to, that can get confusing and distracting to the end user. Here you can manipulate the size of your picture again, and here is another opportunity to either lock or unlock that aspect ratio. If you unlock it, then you can stretch your picture. And locking it won't do you any good. You'll have to come back and try to figure out what that picture looked like and what the good ratio was before you unlocked it. So once you have an image on the web page, unless it's an image of text that you intend to distort for some reason, advertisement or emphasis or whatever, once the image is on the page, I would keep that image, that aspect ratio locked. And so you can resize it to, fine-tune kind of fill spaces or match other pictures on the page. If you're not quite doing that, you can fine-tune the size there. And the horizontal and vertical space, simply add white space between the side of the page and the side of the image and whatever's on the other side of it, horizontal space around the picture and vertical space around the picture, so that nothing can encroach upon the edges of your picture and make it look crowded. So again, kind of pay attention to what it does look like when you do that. You definitely want to keep your pictures uncrowded from your text, but you don't want it to look clunky either. So, there's a fine balance there, fine line. making a picture a link. The way we're going to make this picture into a link is to select the picture, number one, and we're going to ignore the picture tools. We're not going there. We've selected the picture, and now we're going to tell SharePoint that we want to insert something. We want to insert a link. And again, you have to choose between from SharePoint, which means that the destination page is inside of your site collection, or from an address, which means that your destination page is outside of your site collection. If you are editing a page for ODF, forestry, and you want to link to another page within forestry, you would say, I want to do it from SharePoint. If you are editing a page for ODF and you want to link to a DAS page, you would have to link to it from an address because that is outside of your site collection. So let's make this exciting and go from an address. Here's the address. We're going to add the address. Okay, there's my link that I want to go to. Notice that I'm leaving the text to display empty. If I put anything in that text to display box, then my image goes away and is replaced by whatever I put in text to display. And if I do that, then I'm going to be frustrated because I have to go all the way back and insert the image and then try to put the link in again. And so text to display should remain empty when I'm making an image a link. And so I've entered my address that I want to go to. Now I not only get the picture tools, now I get the link tools. And that tells me it was done correctly. And so I'm going to format that. My description of the link is kind of like a tooltip. It's a Yahoo. Bookmark is used in relation to anchors on the page. That's similar to the functionality of the replicant pages, where you're linking from one place on a page to another place on a page. You have to know what the anchors are named before you can use that, though. Again, the description is kind of like a tooltip. You'll see that. You have to determine whether to open this link in a new tab or not. I have to recommend that you do not open the links in a new tab. Again, ADA compliance, screen readers have a hard time jumping between tabs and between windows, and so you will confuse a screen reader. You'll make the user who needs the screen reader unable to use the back button to navigate backwards through their web experience that day. We definitely want to remain ADA compliant. And display icon for a link, if you were linking this image to a document of some kind, SharePoint will do its best to give you an image or a little icon here that will kind of tell the end user what kind of an image it is. And so that really doesn't have anything to do with the image aspect of a link. And once that's in place, you really don't have to do anything. It's simply in place. And now when you preview this page and you roll over that image, now it's a link. And you can see the tooltip there that says to Yahoo. I have no idea what Yahoo has on their homepage, so I'm not going to click that button right now. And that's a link on an image. So as far as the ribbon goes, that's what we can do with images. Any questions do come up about this or any other topic having to do with SharePoint, feel free to give me a call or an email. Phone number 503-378-2126. Email is always egovhelp@state.or.us. And thank you very much for your time. I hope it's been useful.